The coffee was cold before the first ship crossed the line. That was the thing about border duty. Not the silence. Not the weight of watching empty space where something terrible lived. It was the coffee. You poured it hot. The alarms went off. And by the time you looked up, you were drinking bitter regret while the end of someone's career unfolded on the main screen. My name is Elias Venn. Station Commander, Outpost Zenith, Edge of the Forbidden Sector. The sector had other names in other languages. The grave. The mouth. The place where ships forget to come home. But humanity called it what it was, ours. I had been here for 9 years. I had watched 14 incursions in that time. 14 fleets, 14 empires, 14 collections of species who had looked at the warnings, the old maps, the survivor testimonies, the official decrees signed by civilizations that no longer existed, and decided they knew better. None of them had come back whole. The alarm came at 6:47 station time. I remember because the clock was the only thing on my terminal that still worked reliably. Everything else flickered and buzzed and occasionally screamed, because the Forbidden Sector did not like machines any more than it liked visitors. My second-in-command, a woman named Devra Halsey, whose calm voice had talked me through 3 of those 14 incursions, transferred the long-range scan to my screen. Her note was one word: Commonwealth. I pulled up the data. The interstellar Commonwealth was new, young, hungry. They had absorbed 12 species in the past 50 years through a combination of generous trade agreements and the quiet implication that refusal would be unwise. Their fleets were beautiful, polished, well-fed on the resources of conquered worlds. They had sent a vanguard. 43 ships. Cruisers, destroyers, a carrier group whose tactical profile suggested they had read every manual ever written about force projection and none of the ones about survival. The lead ship was broadcasting on all frequencies. A commander who called herself Admiral Soraya Kale. Her face on the transmission was confident, polished. The face of someone who had never been genuinely afraid. This is Admiral Kale of the Interstellar Commonwealth. You are occupying space that falls within our declared expansion zone. We request your immediate withdrawal for diplomatic reassessment. Request, not demand. Clever. They had done their homework on how previous empires had failed. They were trying courtesy. Devra looked at me. They're scared, she said quietly. Look at their formation. Defensive clustering. Weapons not fully powered. They don't want to fight. They want to see if we blink. I took a sip of the cold coffee. It tasted like every other morning I had spent watching someone make the same mistake. They're not scared enough, I said. I opened the channel. I did not use the Commonwealth's diplomatic frequency. I used the one that broadcast directly into the mind of every officer on every ship in their fleet. The technology was not human. It had not needed to be for a long time. I said, "You have been warned." On the screen, Admiral Kale's confident face flickered. Her hand went to her temple. Around her, on bridges I could not see, 43 crews were learning the same lesson. The Forbidden Sector did not forgive curiosity. And I had not finished my coffee. Admiral Kale recovered quickly. That was the thing about the Commonwealth. They trained their commanders to process fear as information, not paralysis. Within 15 seconds, her hand dropped from her temple. Her eyes refocused. She looked directly into the camera on her bridge, and I could see the calculation happening behind her gaze. Psychological warfare, she said, her voice steady. Impressive. But we did not come this far to be turned back by parlor tricks. I said nothing. Devra was already pulling up the Commonwealth's tactical profile on my secondary screen. 43 ships. 18,000 personnel. Enough firepower to crack a small moon. They had positioned their carrier group at the rear, textbook defensive doctrine. They expected us to engage from the front. They had not read the old reports. The ones that said humans did not engage from anywhere predictable. Kale continued, "We are prepared to offer terms. A shared governance arrangement. Resource access in exchange for military protection. Your sector would retain autonomy under Commonwealth oversight." Oversight. There it was. The word empires always reached for when they meant control but wanted to sound generous. I looked at Devra. She was already typing. The Forbidden Sector's defensive network had been waiting for a moment like this for 3 years. Silent drones positioned along the Commonwealth's flanks. Interdiction fields keyed to their engine signatures. Systems that did not appear on any scanner because they were not built by any species the Commonwealth had encountered. "How long?" I asked. 2 minutes until the network is fully aligned, she said. "They haven't noticed. Their sensors are still looking for a conventional threat." I opened the channel again. This time, I let my voice carry something other than calm. Not anger. Not threat. The particular weight of someone who had watched this scene before and knew exactly how it ended. "Admiral Kale, you are 37 seconds from the point where your scanners will stop working. 42 seconds from the point where your weapons will refuse to fire. 51 seconds from the point where your crews will begin to hear voices that are not their own." I paused. "You have 6 seconds to decide whether those numbers are a bluff." On the screen, Kale's composure cracked. Not much. A flicker at the corner of her mouth. A shift in her stance. But I had been doing this for 9 years. I knew what that flicker meant. She was doing the math. And the math was telling her something she did not want to believe. "Commander," Devra said quietly, "network aligned. We can trigger on your order." I looked at the display. 43 ships. 18,000 people. All of them about to learn why the Forbidden Sector had that name. I finished the cold coffee. "Hold," I said. Kale was not the only one who could offer courtesy. The silence on the channel stretched for 11 seconds. On my screen, Admiral Kale's face was a mask of controlled calculation, but her hands, I noticed her hands, were gripping the edge of her command console with white-knuckled tension. She was afraid. Good. Fear meant she might listen. Then her tactical officer leaned into frame. Whispered something. Kale's eyes widened, just a fraction, just for an instant, before she suppressed the reaction. "Commander Venn," she said, her voice quieter now, "my sensors are reporting anomalies. Gravimetric fluctuations inconsistent with natural phenomena. Energy signatures that do not match any known power source in Commonwealth databases." I said nothing. "Are these your doing?" Devra looked at me. Her hand hovered over the network trigger. The drones were in position. The interdiction fields were live. One command, and the Commonwealth fleet would learn what helpless meant in a language they could not translate. But I had learned something in 9 years on this border. The empires that came with fire and fury, they needed to be broken. The ones that came with questions, they needed to be shown something different. "Open a private channel," I said to Devra. "Visual only. To Kale's personal terminal." She raised an eyebrow but complied. When Kale's face reappeared, it was not on the main bridge display. This was her private screen. No officers behind her. No tactical overlays. Just her, alone, looking at me with an expression that was no longer a mask. I said, "You have 12 species in your Commonwealth. You absorbed them through treaties and trade. Not conquest. That is why you are still alive right now." She did not speak. "The empires that came before you, the ones who demanded, who threatened, who brought weapons first and words second, they are in the silence. You can look up their names in your archives. They will be listed as lost, or disappeared, or presumed extinct." Kale's throat moved. "A swallow. What do you want?" she asked. I looked past her, at the display showing 43 ships holding formation at the edge of the Forbidden Sector. 18,000 people who had no idea how close they were to becoming a footnote. "I want you to go home," I said. "And I want you to tell your Commonwealth Council that the Forbidden Sector is not a resource. It is not a territory. It is a door. And you do not knock on a door with warships unless you are prepared for what opens it." She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Just once. And if the Council does not listen?" I let the silence answer. On the display behind her, the Commonwealth fleet began to turn. The Commonwealth fleet did not leave. They turned, yes. Their formation shifted, the carrier group repositioning to what their tactical manuals called a defensive withdrawal posture. But they did not engage their FTL drives. They did not retreat beyond the border. They sat at the edge of the forbidden sector like a hand hovering over a flame, not yet committed to the burn. Devra's voice was flat. "They're waiting. For what?" "Reinforcements, probably. Their communication traffic spiked after your private channel closed. They're talking to someone." I looked at the display. 43 ships. 18,000 people. And somewhere behind them, moving through the dark at speeds our passive sensors could barely track, a second wave. Larger than the first. Much larger. 67 ships, Devra said, reading the new data. Arrival in 4 hours. That's a full battle group, Commander. They're not here to negotiate. I had seen this before. The hesitation. The feigned retreat. The quiet call for more guns while pretending to consider peace. Every empire did it differently, but the shape was always the same. They could not believe the warning was real until they had tested it with everything they had. "Kale," I said. Devra raised an eyebrow. "You think she knew?" "I think she's following orders. And I think whoever gave those orders has never stood at this border." I opened the channel again. Not private this time. Wide. Every ship in the Commonwealth fleet. Every speaker. Every mind. "Admiral Kale. I see your reinforcements. 67 ships. 4 hours." On the main display, Kale's face went still. Her tactical officer froze. Someone on her bridge, young, probably, scared, made a sound that the microphones caught. A whimper. "You have a choice," I continued. "You can wait 4 hours. You can watch your second wave cross the border. You can watch them vanish like the scout you lost when you first arrived. Or you can leave now. Take your people home. Tell your council that the forbidden sector is not a problem to be solved with more ships." Kale's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "And if I choose to wait?" I looked at Devra. She had already pulled up the network status. The drones were armed. The interdiction fields were calibrated. The voices, the ones that lived in the space between thought and sound, were ready to speak. I said, "Then the lesson will be thorough." On the display, Kale closed her eyes. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the weight of 18,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. When she opened them again, she gave the order. The fleet began to move. Not toward us. Away. But the second wave was already coming. And whoever commanded it was not listening to reason. I could see it in the signal logs. No response to Kale's recall. No change in trajectory. 67 ships. Burning bright. Heading straight for the line. The second wave crossed the border at 11:03. I watched them do it. 67 ships in perfect formation, weapons hot, shields raised. Their commander, a man named Admiral Thorne, according to the transmission logs, had ignored Kale's recall. He had ignored her warnings. He had ignored the silence where the scout ship used to be. He was going to learn. Devra said, "Network ready." I said, "Trigger." The forbidden sector woke up. Not with noise. Not with fire. With absence. One moment, Thorne's flagship was transmitting on all frequencies, demanding our surrender. The next moment, it was gone. Not destroyed. Not exploded. Gone. As if reality had simply decided it no longer belonged. 66 ships left. Then 65. Then 62. The crews screamed on the open channel. Their weapons fired at nothing. Their sensors showed empty space where their comrades had been. The voices, the ones we did not control, the ones that lived here long before we arrived, began to speak. "You were warned. You should not have come. This space is not yours." Admiral Thorne's face appeared on my screen. He was sweating. His eyes were wide. He was no longer a conqueror. He was a man who had just understood that every warning he had ignored was written in the blood of people exactly like him. "Stop," he whispered. "Please." I looked at Devra. She was already pulling up the casualty estimate. 0 humans. 0 losses on our side. The forbidden sector had defended itself without firing a single shot from any weapon we had built. I opened the channel. "You have 47 ships remaining," I said. You will turn around. You will leave. And you will tell your Commonwealth that this sector is forbidden. Not because we say so. Because the void itself will not allow you to stay. Thorn nodded. He was crying. I had seen that before too. The fleet turned. This time, they did not hesitate. This time, they ran. I sat back. The coffee was cold. Devra was already filing the report. Somewhere behind me, the forbidden sector hummed with the quiet satisfaction of a door that had closed once more. Admiral Kale sent a message 3 hours later. It said, "We will not return." I believed her. I poured fresh coffee. This time, I drank it while it was hot. The stars outside did nothing in particular. That was fine. They had done enough. The forbidden sector was quiet again, waiting for the next empire to forget. The Commonwealth never officially acknowledged what happened. Their official records state that the expansion initiative into Sector 7 was postponed indefinitely due to logistical reassessment. Their unofficial records, the ones that pass between admirals in encrypted whispers, tell a different story. Admiral Kale was promoted, not because she succeeded, but because she survived. The Commonwealth Council decided that anyone who could bring 70% of her fleet home from the forbidden sector understood something about caution that could not be taught. She gave one briefing, closed door, classified at the highest level. The only phrase that leaked was her closing statement. We build walls around some places not to keep people out. To keep ourselves from finding out what lives there. Admiral Thorn did not return to active command. He submitted his resignation 48 hours after the fleet limped back to Commonwealth space. His final medical evaluation noted significant psychological distress and recurring auditory phenomena consistent with trauma. He never spoke publicly about what he had seen. But in his private journals, sealed until his death, he wrote the same phrase on every page of his final year. The voices were kind. That was the worst part. They were so kind. Lieutenant Devra Halsey received a commendation. She filed it in her bottom drawer and never mentioned it again. When I asked her once, months later, if she ever thought about what we had done, she looked at me for a long moment. I think about what we didn't do, she said. We could have erased all of them. We chose not to. That's the part the empires never understand. We chose. I still command Outpost Zenith. The coffee is still usually cold. The alarms still go off. But fewer now. The word has spread. The Commonwealth warns its allies. The allies warn their neighbors. The forbidden sector has become something rare in galactic politics, a boundary that everyone respects without being forced. Not because they love us. Because they remember. Sometimes, late at night, when the station is quiet and the sensors show nothing but empty space and patient stars, I open the old logs. 14 incursions. 14 fleets. Each one certain that the warnings did not apply to them. Each one learning that the warnings were not threats. They were descriptions. I close the logs. I pour fresh coffee. I look at the wall where Devra pinned a child's drawing, sent through diplomatic channels, origin unknown, of a small station at the edge of the dark, with a single light burning in the window. The caption, in shaky handwriting, "Thank you for watching." I do not know who sent it. I do not need to know. The forbidden sector is quiet. The coffee is warm. And somewhere out there, in the vast, hungry dark, empires are learning to be afraid again. That is not cruelty. That is courtesy. We were warned once too. We remember. And we are still watching.